Oh, no, you guys don't have to have your camera on. This is mostly if you would like, if you have a question, you're more than welcome to turn your camera on at the end when we have questions so we can see your face if you're comfortable, but no one needs to have their camera on.
I see that there are a few hands up. And I think that right now we're going to take questions in the chat. If you're having a technical issue, if you could do a chat to the host and panelist, and we'll try to assist you. So if you've got a question, please put it into the chat.
I'm also getting an email from someone who's saying that they're having trouble joining and that they've had trouble joining the past couple webinars. I don't know, Selby, if you're able, I'm gonna CC you on the email. I mean, I don't know what fancy tips I can give them. I don't know why they're not able to get in. But I sent the email your way, Selby, if you're able to troubleshoot with them. Okay. All right. I'm going to attempt to start sharing the slides here. I'm so used to.
I'm writing answers to the chat about the recording and the.
Okay. Yeah, so we are, I'll just say it one more time. After the recording comes out, it'll probably be tomorrow, the next day, I will email a copy of the recording. It's a link that's good for 30 days. And I will also send the slides with that. And eventually we're hoping to have it posted on the SAMHSA website, but that can take time. So if you didn't get it, and if you don't have an invite directly from me, or if I don't have your email, you can put your email in the chat. You can also ask your GPO for a copy of this, and they should be able to disseminate for you. I did put my email in the chat earlier, so you can have that. Okay. Hold on. Where am I? There we go. All right. Let's jump in. All right. How do I enable that? Go away. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us on this Monday. We're going to be going over how to come into compliance with the updated criteria and attestation requirements for your grant. My name is Kate Slaughter. I'm a GPO for the CCBHC program, and Mary Blake is on with me. She is our fearless team leader, and she will be answering some questions for us at the end. Oh, we call it a program coordinator now. I got to get with the new terms. So our agenda here, we're going to go over information for the CCBHC IA grants first. It's pretty quick, and then those grantees can jump off so they don't have to sit on the entire time. So that'll be for CCBHC I grantees who are certified by the state, and for those who already have their attestations accepted by SAMHSA. Then we'll be going over the guidance for the CCBHC PDI grantees. So that would be grantees who are applying for their CCBHC certification from their state in the first year of their grant, and those who are submitting their attestations to SAMHSA, which are both due to SAMHSA by the end of this fall, September, excuse me, end of September. And then Mary is going to lead us in the Q&A session. So hopefully we'll have lots of time. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Mary is going to monitor the chat, and we'll go over the questions at the end. All right. Okay, so I don't like that I can't see my entire screen. I just see, it's very weird. So for the CCBHC program, by the end of year one for the, am I even on the right?
No, go back one.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little funky. There we go. I can't read the title because the Zoom is in the way, so apologies if I'm a little discombobulated here. So all CCBHCE program grant recipients are required to comply with the 2023 revised CCBHC certification criteria by July 2024. This includes CCBHC IA grantees. So IA grantees need to submit updated documentation to their GPO demonstrating compliance with the revised criteria by July 1st, 2024. They must submit this documentation even if their state recertification timeframe is on a different schedule. They also need to submit their documentation to their GPO through ERA two-way correspondence. They need to submit attestation, demonstration, compliance with the revised criteria. Sorry, this is a pain. I can't read my titles. So this is for IA grantees who are not certified by the state but are submitting their attestations. So you need to submit your attestation demonstrating compliance with the revised criteria to your GPO through two-way correspondence and ERA by July 1st, 2024. And if your next attestation is based on the 3-year time frame for your community needs assessment, and it's not due until after July 1st of 2024, then your attestation only needs to demonstrate compliance with the updated changes in the revised criteria. You don't have to submit an entire new attestation. If your attestation expires prior to July 1st, 2024, you may want to consider attesting to the new criteria if possible, because if not, then you'll have to reattest, in a couple months anyway. So you might as well get it out of the way. If you're using the initial criteria and plan to include some areas that can conform to the revised criteria, please note it in the area of your attestation and make sure it's highlighted and that your GPO is aware of it so they're not comparing it to the wrong criteria version. Okay, so this is for PDIs. Honestly, that was it for IA grantees. I know that was really short, but you guys can jump off if you want. If you have questions regarding this, please email your GPO and I will be sharing the link and the slides with you shortly, okay? So for PDI grantees, by the end of year 1, which is September 29th, 2023, this fall, grantees are required to come into compliance with CCBHC certification criteria. Grantees must submit the required documentation demonstrating compliance in the PDF format via ERA Commons and the terms tracker. So not through direct correspondence, but there's an actual spot in the terms tracker, the way that you submit your 6-month reports, programmatic reports. There are 2 different groups that we're speaking to today for the PDI grants. That would be the grantees who are becoming CCBHCs through the certification by their state, and then grantees who are not certified but are attesting to SAMHSA that they are meeting the criteria. So in addition, all PDI grantees will have to comply with the revised criteria by July 1st, 2024. So if you decide to this fall to do the original criteria, you need to then resubmit, just how we were talking about with the IA grantees. You need to resubmit documentation showing how you've come into compliance with those other areas by July 1st, 2024. So again, I can't see the top of this, but grantees need to submit materials that, this is for the IA grantees. They need to submit, for grantees who are being certified by their state, for PDI grantees. They need to submit material that they've sent to their state for their most recent certification to demonstrate compliance with the certification criteria, as well as a copy of the certification. So just sending us the certificate is not enough. If you're unable to provide the full application that you submitted to the state, then please submit an executive summary or other key information provided in your application demonstrating your CCBHC's compliance. If your state only required you to report on some of the CCBHC certification criteria because aspects of the criteria are covered under another accreditation or certification requirements, please note this when you send in your materials. If you were certified by your state more than 2 years ago, please indicate when you are due for recertification and note any changes in your CCBHC status that have occurred since you were last certified. Also, please include a copy of the state's concurrence or state statement of certification. Include copies of relevant supporting documents, such as policies, procedures, checklists as necessary to demonstrate how your clinic is operationalizing compliance with the criteria. So at a minimum, you need to submit your, like as attachments, you need to submit any DCOs if you have any, identifying the specific CCBHC services to be provided by the DCO and clarifying how the CCBHC will work with the DCO in compliance with the certification requirements. You also need to attach any an organizational chart for CCBHC leadership and also your staffing and training plans. So please note that SAMHSA's review of your materials is completely separate from any state certification process and does not make you eligible for state certification. After reviewing your submission, SAMHSA may follow up with additional questions or request additional materials. So this is for, I think this reads up top for grantees who are certifying through, sorry, not certifying, who are attesting to their GPOs through SAMHSA. So those grantees need to submit an attestation describing how your CCBHC complies with the certification criteria. And while SAMHSA does not require grantees to submit the attestation and supporting documents in a specific format, your attestation needs to state which version of the certification criteria you're attesting to. And then you need to fully and succinctly describe how your CCBHC meets the criteria, each criteria, and list the relevant supporting documentation, and clearly indicate areas or elements of the attestation, if any, that are compliant with the other version of the certification criteria. You also need to include copies of relevant supporting documentations, like we mentioned earlier, policies, procedures, checklists as necessary to demonstrate how your clinic is operationalizing, that's a hard word for me apparently, compliance with the criteria. And at a minimum, you need to also submit any DCOs, your organizational chart for leadership, staffing, and training plans. We did send out a copy of a previous attestation that you can look at for, look at their format and kind of use as a guide, but that example was based on the old criteria. So you really need to pay attention and make sure that you're, obviously we don't want you guys copying and pasting or anything, but that's really just for you guys to look at and use as a guide. So SAMHSA recommends that you review the full criteria as well as the compliance checklist for the relevant versions as you prepare for your attestation. SAMHSA encourages grant recipients to limit the attestation narrative to no more than 30 pages, not including the attachments. And if that's not possible to do this, please reach out to your GPO for guidance and they can assist you. GPO assistance will be provided when the GPO has found that the attestation sufficiently describes how the GPO acceptance will be provided when the GPO has found that the attestation sufficiently describes how the CCBHC fully meets the criteria. So everything needs to be already in operation. It's not like, we plan to do this in 6 months kind of thing. It all has to be up and running. Please note that SAMHSA review and acceptance of your attestation does not constitute certification as a CCBHC. Note to PDI grant recipients, if the attestation you submitted in September of 2023 is based on the initial certification criteria, you will need to resubmit an updated attestation by July 1st, 2024, as we mentioned earlier, demonstrating your CCBHC's compliance with the updated criteria. That's it. I'm going to get out of presenter mode so that I can see the questions here. Let's see. How do I stop sharing? Okay. Mary, are you there? That went really fast. I'm sorry if I was speaking quickly, everybody.
I am here. Sorry, I've been busy in the chat.
Okay.
Yes. you want me to answer some questions
Yeah,
verbally?
yeah, I think that would be good. So everybody, make sure everybody sees them. And
Okay,
I guess people could also raise their hand if they want to, verbally ask a question too.
well, I see a number of hands raised. Should I just go through those first?
Sure.
So Daphne Hathaway, you have your hand raised. And how do I unmute her? Can we unmute her?
I think that's a Selby thing.
Selby there?
Hi.
Okay, Daphne,
Yeah, I don't have a question. I'm so sorry, my hand was still raised.
Oh, no worries. Nick Shang, you have a question, your hand's raised?
No.
Okay. If you don't have a question and you see that your hand is up, you can feel free to put it down.
They were just,
Veronica, you have your hand raised?
I'm sorry, I thought I had lowered it already.
Oh, all right, Emily FICO, is that correct? Oh, her hand's down too. Oh no, her hand is still up.
Okay, hi, sorry, I was just trying to unmute. We were told by our main person, I can't remember their name, to go to about attestation, and we were told that we don't need to submit anything other than DCO agreements, the staffing plan, and the other required document, just because if we were to submit like all of our policies, any other supporting evidence, it would just be a boatload of information to provide you guys. Is that correct?
Yes, that for right now, that's correct. I think Kate talked about that. Kate, do you want to say anything else to that?
yeah, so that's right. So really you want to do your main attestation and the documents that we listed above. There were just a few, right? Your DCOs, your staffing plan, your organizational chart, and your training
Right.
plan. So beyond that, you want to have the documents cited in your attestation and have them available. So if your GPO feels like they need more information or something's a little gray, they can ask for any of the documentation that you're citing in the attestation. So just make sure that you have them
Okay.
available and ready to go if they do ask for them.
Great.
Right.
And then just additionally, you mentioned at the end that we should limit the attestation form to 30 pages, not including those supporting documents. Our state doesn't certify us because we're not a demonstration grantee, but our attestation form right now is at 69 pages because we're trying to provide descriptions of what evidence we do have that we're meeting the criteria. How should we approach that?
So Kate, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mary. It's okay.
So we're going to send out an example of an attestation that met the basic requirements for you to take a look at. I think the thing that we want you all to know is that when you are writing your attestation, what you're describing to us is how you're operationalizing meeting the criteria. You don't need to describe every single policy, but you could say our staffing plan meets the minimum requirements as spelled out, see attached staffing plan. And you know, our policies around urgent response meet the threshold cited in the criteria. And then as your documentation, your protocols for urgent response or something like that. I mean, you don't have to write a whole tome for each criterion because it's a lot of work for you. And it's also, all of the GPOs have to review these materials. Kate, did you want to add anything else?
No, that's great.
Oh man. All right, and I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Emily, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one other thing. If your attestation is going over that 30 pages, talk with your GPO.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, definitely will do. Thank you. And then we just had questions as to, because we are attesting to the newest criteria, We just won't yet meet the criteria for the 5 clinic required measures. For criteria that we may not meet just yet, but will meet by July 2024, how should we attest for those?
I mean, you could put a note in that section saying, we don't currently meet this, we're waiting for, the code books and all of the information to meet the requirements for quality metrics. And then you can say, we'll submit those before July 1st, 2024, something along those lines.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
I would also just like underline or like bold something to make it super obvious, in case, because your GPO is probably going to be reading like 20 of these this fall, right? So,
Right.
they might be a little bit on autopilot or something. So you really just want to make that very, very obvious for them that you're going to be attesting to the original criteria in that section.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are there other hands up, Mary?
There are, sorry, somebody joined the Teams meeting. I was sending a note to them. Kathy Duria.
Yes, hi, it's Duryea. Thank you. So I have a question for you. I have an IA and we had submitted a needs assessment back March 30th for this county for the work that we're doing. Our GPO had shared with us that we needed to submit a new attestation 9/29 because our needs assessment was done 6 months prior. And I'm feeling that that's a little different than what we're hearing today. So could you clarify?
Right, so you're an IA grant, correct?
Yes.
Right, so want to make sure that you're not getting confused because the latter part of this webinar was focused on the PDI
Correct.
grants.
Understood.
So-
I have a PDI as well, but I have
Yeah.
two different grants.
For the IA grants, if you've just submitted, so you have to do a needs assessment every 3 years. That's
Correct.
spelled out in the required activities. And within 6 months of completing your needs assessment, you need to submit an attestation. So if the attestation you submitted is in alignment with the revised criteria, you don't need to submit anything by July 1st. You've already submitted it. If your attestation was to the old criteria, then by July 1st, 2024, you will send updates to those parts of the criteria that changed in the revised criteria.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It does.
And just to let you know, one document that's on SAMHSA's website that'll be very helpful for those of you who are just having to update to the changes. There's a document, I'll put the link to it in the chat, called the Summary of Changes. So you can go straight to the parts of the criteria that changed.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I just want to repeat what I think I'm hearing you say is, since we submitted a needs assessment March 30th for an IA grant, we only need to then resubmit a new attestation July 1st of 2024, attesting to the new areas of the criteria, not, just the new areas that are hitting for the new attestation. Is that correct?
No, what I said is that the guidance in the required activities of the NOFO say that within 6 months of submitting an updated or completing an updated needs assessment, you need to submit an updated attestation that incorporates findings from the needs assessment. So if you did if you've completed your needs assessment on March 30th, then you would need to submit an updated attestation reflecting any new findings based on the updated needs assessment. So you would still have to submit an attestation that shows where, if anywhere, there are changes in your attestation because of the findings that you've developed.
Understood.
But then in July 1st of 2020, by July 1st of 2024, you will need to, again, submit documentation of how you're meeting any of the changes that occurred because of the revised criteria. If you can submit an updated attestation now, you
Yep.
know, by 9:30, that shows your compliance with the revised criteria, that's great.
That's what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah, and then
We
you
are
don't
going down
need,
the right track.
as long as you meet the revised criteria before July 1st, 2024, you
Mhm.
don't need to resend.
Okay. Thank you. That's much clearer for me. I appreciate it.
Sure. Victoria.
Hi, so I know that it was said that we need to have everything fully in place by the time we submit our attestation. So my question is about our DCO agreements and relationships. Do those have to be kind of fully in place and operational by the time we attest, or is it enough to just say, you know, we're in the final stages of these agreements?
So I have a couple of thoughts for you on that. I'm sorry, I'm going to be long-winded, but in the first place, if you don't have all your DCO agreements in place, then you will submit your attestation and say which ones are not in place. However, if independent of having a DCO in place, you still meet the basic elements of the criteria, and you're adding DCOs to further expand the breadth or the scope of that particular service or service category, your GPO may be able to approve the attestation because as a CCBHC directly, you meet the basic requirements spelled out in the criteria. So it would depend on whether that DCO is providing a service in lieu of what you're providing or not. If the DCO is providing a service that you don't provide, then your GPO will review the attestation and will speak with you to develop a plan for how you can expeditiously come into compliance. So the GPO won't approve the attestation until you meet the criteria. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's really helpful.
So let me go back and are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Do
I've
you
got
need
some
to-
questions for you, Mary.
Okay,
So Stephanie Bergen West, she might have asked this before we were talking about it in the Q&A, but do all grantees only have to provide the 3 documents and have the listed documentation on hand if needed? As a PDI grantee, we will not be including all supporting documentation with the attestation. So that's right, like we talked about before. Have the documentation that we listed, right? Your attestation, your staffing plan, your training plan, your organizational chart, and your DCOs, and then have the other documentation available as needed. And then Susan Lopez asked, do we need to send in our CQI plan with the attestation or refer to it within our documents?
well, we haven't stated that you would automatically have to submit your CQI plan with your attestation. However, there may be a case where the GPO would like to see what you have in place for your CQI based on how you've described your compliance with the overall criteria. So it's possible that a GPO may want to cross-reference that and ask you to additionally submit that, but it's not part of the automatic first submission.
Emily asked, do we have guidance for submitting an updated attestation for IA grants?
I don't believe that we have sent out formal guidance on that. What I would say, and we'll talk in our team about whether it would be helpful. I think maybe it would be helpful if we send some kind of formal guidance, but in general, what you would do is you would submit the approved attestation from prior times, and then you would note in any place where changes have been made based on the findings of the needs assessment. And then you would also attach your updated needs assessment with your updated attestation. So you don't need to change what you don't need to change. Let me put it that way.
Jody Beeson asked, is there guidance on the structure for a staffing plan and a training plan?
No, we assume you all have your own formats for staffing plan and training plan. Kate, you want to add something?
Yeah, that might be a good question to put out on the listserv. I see sometimes people asking grantees for examples. And that might be a good one to put out there in the universe. If you guys aren't on the listserv for CCBHC grantees, you can send me an email and I can make sure that you can get on that, by the way. Can someone post the listserv? Is there?
Yeah. And
Sorry, you have to be added to the listserv by Alfred Jackson. So if you could send me an email directly, that would be great. And just let me know that that's what you need and I will connect you with him. Or, I mean, can I, right? Mary, isn't that, or does their GPO need to sign off on that? Or can they email Alfred directly? Like how?
I always go through the PD, but I would recommend you just go through your PD.
Yeah. I would, here, I'll put, I'm gonna put Alfred's email. Alfred Jackson at samhsa.hhs. I'm gonna put it's Alfred Jackson at samhsa.hhs.gov. If you send him an email, but you need to CC your PD because he needs to know that you're connected to a grant, and you can ask for permission, or you can email your GPO first, and however you want to do it. But make sure that you coordinate with your GPO.
I wanted to answer Emily. I'm sorry, you corrected me when I first opened up the phone for you. Emily FICO?
Fico.
FICO.
You.
So Emily, let me just say for everybody, actually, if you're a PDI grant, you cannot possibly comply with the quality measures aspect of the criteria, because we don't have the final guidance for you all on the updated quality measures. So yes, highlight that section in your attestation and state that you plan to meet them by July 1st, 2024. We at SAMHSA completely understand that you won't necessarily meet them by 9/30 or 9/29/2023. And then for submitting your attestations for PDI grants, for PDI grants only, you are going to submit your attestations to ERA terms tracker. And so that is where for IA grants, though, they will be submitting their attestations using ERA two-way correspondence. Okay. Sorry, I'm just typing this into the chat. Sorry, multitasking. Kate, do you want to go to the next question?
Yeah. Okay, so Amelie, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Amelie asks, I just want to clarify, if we attested the new criteria at the end of September, but we do not yet meet the criteria for the quality measures, that we can still attest to the rest of the criteria and highlight what we will attest to. I think you just answered that, Mary.
Okay.
And then Maggie McKenzie asked, so we are able to attest to some new criteria and some old criteria if there are situations that we cannot meet, correct? For example, our patient portal is pending our EHR implementation or implementing the system, but we can't control when they don't respond to us. Can I make these comments and then attest when needed?
So essentially, I want to make sure, because it sounds like they're two different questions, but maybe they're not. In the first order of business, you're going to let us know when you submit your attestation at the very beginning, which version of the criteria serve as the basis for your attestation. That should be kind of in the title of your attestation submission. So your GPO knows that for the bulk of the attestation, I'm going to be looking at this version. Then if there's certain criteria within your attestation that are aligning with the other version, you're going to highlight those so that your GPO knows this one actually is attesting to the other version of the criteria. So for instance, if you're submitting, the basis of your submission is the old criteria, but there's some of the criteria around crisis services where you're complying with the revised criteria, highlight that and document that this is per the revised criteria, even though the bulk of the attestation is on the old criteria. If there's a part of your attestation that does not align with either one, in other words, you don't fully comply with the criteria, you're also going to note that in your submission and say, we don't currently fully meet this criteria. And then you'll submit your plan and work with your GPO for the timeline of when you will be in compliance with it.
Okay, I'm just collecting a few more. I've got a lot of questions here. I'm trying to copy them over.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, there are.
Okay.
So Lori just asked, IA attestations are not due until July 2024. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. But if your attestation is due like naturally on the 3-year time period before then obviously you need to comply with that due date as well. We've got a question. Can SAMHSA send out responses to all these FAQs?
We will probably send out an FAQ and we'll try to consolidate answers. A lot of the questions are somewhat aligned. And I see Will Ruff has his hand up. Can we take that question? Or do you want to answer more chat questions?
No, well, let's go to Will and then we can go back to the chat.
Okay, Will.
Hi, thank you. My question is, once we received guidance, because we were under the impression we had to attest for the new criteria, we're in year 1 of a PDI grant. And so we want to do the new criteria. We don't want to do double work. So I'm taking my work that I've done, I'm applying it to the new one. And it will be okay if I say, hey, we implement all of our new policy changes in we're a community mental health agency, cover 7 counties. We're a huge small business. So if I say, hey, we're going to put this in front of the commission when we normally change policy, which is in May and June of every year. And then the new attestation is due, same for us, in July of next year, which will align perfectly with updating our PNP and aligning what we're doing with the criteria. As long as I notate in that attestation plan due at the end of September, hey, this is our plan, this is when we're going to do it and how we're going to do it. And that will be sufficient for SAMHSA, as long as, hey, we're not quite meeting this yet. We're going to implement a new policy. That policy will be written between now and when we put new policy into action at the end of our state fiscal year, which is July 1st to June 30th, which will align perfectly with our due date. That would be okay. Did Ms. Blake or Kate, that would be fine to do?
So I just want to go back to the PDI funding opportunity announcement. The expectation in the NOFO is that grantees will be in full compliance with certification criteria within a year of award.
Right.
I understand that you're trying to come into compliance with the new criteria, but I would say that we're not saying it's perfectly okay not to comply
No,
with the
right.
criteria. So you may want to look at the revised criteria. If you already meet all of those, go ahead and submit that so you're kind of responsive to what the NOFO expectation is, even though we recognize that you're moving forward to comply with the revised criteria. So I'm not going to say it's okay. We recognize that there may be some grantees who are not fully compliant.
Right.
What that means is that you will not have that term resolved. It will not be accepted by your GPO until you meet full compliance. So if you're compliant with the old criteria and you're still working out kinks with the new ones, my recommendation is at least to demonstrate that you are in compliance with one version of the criteria.
Yeah, most of it centers around EHR working with our NetSmart vendor and things kind of out of our control, bringing in, working in, just some suites and things like that to be added on to it. So most, if not all, we're in compliance. It's just, hey, this is new things. New criteria came out and we're looking at that. At the same time, we're changing our PNP because we do it once a year because we have a board of commission that is, basically given to each county in our area by the board of supervisors in each county. So we have to put all before a commission. It's a bureaucratic process. It's time once a year. So that's why I was kind of wanting to say, hey, I know what the NOFO says as far as, hey, we got to have this done September 30th. But there may be certain items where I just say, hey, we're going to do this at this time. Here's our plan. We know we'll have that, taken care of, but we have a plan. This is the timeline. This is when we plan on doing it. And then that would be sufficient to obviously give y'all a plan, a timeline, and a dateline for what we don't have and need to do in the future.
The other thing that I would urge you to look at is in the criteria, there may be some wiggle room in some of the criteria that say, if this is not possible, then. And so in a lot of these criteria, there are shades of gray. And so if you meet the basic spirit of the criterion, but you may not meet it in its full robustness, that may be something that could be acceptable depending on what the issue is. So just to say.
Sure, and thank you for that. No, yeah.
Will, I just want to draw your attention to the chat. Angie Marmanillo wants to network with you. So she put her email in the chat for you. Just making sure you saw that. Next question, Maureen Dunleavy. We submitted our staffing plan and training plan with our report in March with the needs assessment. Do we need to resubmit or may we just reference it in the attestation?
Talk with your GPO.
Okay, Tanika Sosa Gonzalez, how do we proceed if our state does not have certification criteria? Do we just mention this in the attestation?
So the attestation is supposed to align with the federal CCBHC certification criteria. And if you're certified by your state, then you should abide by your state certification criteria, which are primarily based on the federal criteria, but may have some tweaks in them. So your attestation, if your state doesn't certify and you're not certified by your state, you would abide by the federal criteria.
Okay, then we've got a question from Lori Davila. Will SAMHSA be sending out written guidance that detail these different requirements for the IA versus PDI grants? So that guidance actually did come out. I think it was it last week, Mary, or the week before? You sent it out through ERA two-way correspondence, which goes to the PD and the business official. So if you're not the PD, ask your PD for that guidance material. Mary sent out a copy of the guidance material that kind of spells all of this out. And it's actually where these slides came from. And then it also had the example of the attestation that was on based on the earlier criteria. And if for some reason you're the PD and you didn't get it, you can send me an email and I'll share it with you. This next question is from Tim Sheehan. Aren't we supposed to start with the new criteria, then explain where we can't meet the new by referencing the old criteria, or is it our choice, old or new criteria?
So essentially the grantee gets to decide which version of the criteria. It's less work for PDI grants if they can attest to the revised criteria, because then they only have to do it once. If you mostly meet the revised criteria, but there are a few areas that you don't, should probably make the revised criteria the basis of your submission and then reference those places in the old criteria. Where you're meeting the old criteria and working to come into compliance with the new criteria. And for those elements, then you'd have to submit updated documentation for those elements before July 1st, 2024. So grantees have a choice which version is going to be the basis of their submission. As long as they reference the other version in any place where they're complying with that other version.
We have, let's see.
There's a question for you, Kate, about lunch and learn.
I know I got excited when I saw it. Alexis Peculis asked, will tomorrow CCBHC Lunch and Learn be recorded and available for me if I cannot join this time? So the Lunch and Learn is actually on Wednesday. It's noon Eastern time. We always have them on Wednesdays at that time, and it will be recorded. I will send a link out. If you don't, I only have the direct emails of my grants, but I give the information to your GPO, so you can ask your GPO or you can email me, and that's fine too.
We could also put the link out through the distribution list.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think Alfred actually did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're not tuned in to the Lunch and Learns, it's just it's a peer-to-peer sharing platform that we've started. We've only done 3, so I think 2 or 3 so far. This week we're doing we have 2 grantees that are sharing their models on how they're reducing inpatient hospitalizations. So if there's a topic that you want to hear about, or a topic that you would feel passionate about and that you guys are doing really well in and you want to present, reach out to me or your GPO, and we can discuss. Let's see, should we ask our PD if we can join the Lunch and Learn? Anybody from the program can join the Lunch and Learn. Your GPO is aware of it, and if you need the information, please ask your GPO, but you don't necessarily need permission. There's another question. Lance asked, could it be possible that there is not old criteria to reference in place of new criteria? Isn't there some totally new criteria?
Yes, there are some criteria that are new, that were added and not revised. And in that case, you meet it or you don't. So if you're using the new criteria as the basis for your submission, and there are elements that you don't yet meet, then you need to say that.
Angie, I see your email. You were unaware of the Lunch and Learns. We are working to get them posted on the website. We're revamping the website right now. So it might take some time to get those up there. The first one was on advisory board and groups. The first one was on vet services for, I know, having lots of blunders today, vet services through the CCBHC, and then the second one was the advisory group or board, and I can't remember if there was a third one that I'm just like forgetting. I think the third one is the one that we're doing this week, and then we have another one in September that we're doing on integrating substance use services. So Angie, they are recorded. The recordings are too large for me to email out, and the recordings only last for 30 days. So I think they've expired, but I can double check on that. But we are going to be posting them on the SAMHSA website, so you can access them eventually. So apologies for that. It is a newer thing that we're doing, and so maybe not, your GPO might have missed an announcement or something like that. But please do ask them about it. Can you repost the link to?
I just did.
Okay, thank you. Is that the link to it? Okay. Thank you. Was there any more questions under that? I think that's it. Also, I just want to reiterate, if you're not on the listserv, you touch base with your GPO first. I feel bad. I don't want Alfred to be inundated with lots of emails. You need to touch base with your GPO, and then either you can email Alfred with your GPO CC'd on the email, or they can email Alfred for you. Don't want to blow up Alfred's spot there. Two more questions. Okay, one, confirming we still provide all attestation documents and not the state certification application if we are provisionally certified through our state and have another 17 months with our state to meet full certification.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so Chastity, what I would say is that if you want to submit the state's the application to the state, or use the application to the state as the basis for your attestation, and then add any of the areas where you don't, where the state provisionally certified you, if you feel that you meet those areas, you can state as such. But yeah, you would submit an attestation, but you don't have to recreate everything for the attestation. You can beg, borrow, and steal from the application you sent to the state.
Okay, Chastity's second question. We had heard about a month ago that we could provide plans for implementation over areas we aren't fully meeting yet with the new criteria. So it sounds like from this conversation today, we need to state any areas we are not fully meeting criteria yet, and our attestation will not be approved until we meet full criteria. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. And just again, we want to make sure that you all are successful in your grants, but we also are mindful that the NOFO has an expectation that PDI grants will be in compliance within a year of award. So that means that this is not an opportunity for you to take 3 years to come in compliance with the attestation criteria. You will have already been out of compliance with the expectations of the NOFO. Your GPO will work with you if you don't meet every single area. But this is not to say that that you can just not be in compliance. Let me put it that way. So your GPO will work with you, but will also really need to see good faith efforts to come into compliance.
So Mary, just to clarify, so if a grantee, say for whatever reason, they're not going to be able to have their criteria met on time for the attestation, instead of waiting until it's fully met and then submitting, you're saying that they should submit the attestation at the due date, the time of the due date, and
Absolutely.
just okay, got it. That's helpful.
Yeah, submit the attestation by the due date, because at least you will have met the requirement to submit.
Mhm.
You haven't met yet the requirement to meet the criteria requirements, but you will have met the requirement to submit your attestation. And then the next step after submitting the attestation is for the GPO to approve it. Once the GPO approves it, that required activity is fully met. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
And I see James has his hand up. James May, you have a question?
No, I didn't. I must have accidentally hit the.
Oh, no worries.
We have a
Thank-
question from Jolene. Do you have state representatives from whom our state, sorry, my thing is freezing, from who our state might consult with to advance their readiness for developing their own certification criteria?
No, in other words, your state is not a state that's implementing statewide CCBHC initiatives. Is that correct, Jolene? Yeah. So, do you mind me asking what state you're in? They're planning, or New Mexico, so they have a planning grant. Aha. And have you connected with the people who are leading that planning grant? Yeah.
Yeah, Jennifer's asking if there's a list of states that are in the planning.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the National Council website. That is probably the best place to know what states are implementing. And I think that we have a slide, I believe, that we can send out that also has kind of a representation of states and where they are at in terms of their implementation of CCBHC. And Brandeis, New Jersey is a demonstration state, so they're part of the CCBHC demonstration program.
Latasha Howlett, she's one of our wonderful GPOs. She just wanted to clarify something. She said Chastity mentioned full new criteria in her question, but she wants to clarify that grantees can fully meet the criteria for their attestation this fall under the old criteria. So you can just totally ignore the new criteria and submit your attestation under the original this fall. And then in July, you can then submit what you need to for the new updated criteria. That's a very good point, Latasha. Thank you.
Thanks, Latasha.
How do you know if your state is a certifying state or not? We're in New Jersey. So
New Jersey is New Jersey. So let me just say the states that certify CCBHCs will either be part of the Section 223 CCBHC demonstration program under that's co-managed by SAMHSA and the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or there will be a state that is implementing using another mechanism, whether it's a SPA or a waiver. New Jersey is part of the CCBHC demonstration program, but states participating in the demo program have to go through specific processes in order to add CCBHCs to their demo. And they focus their certification on CCBHCs that are or will be in their demo.
Marcia asks, our GPO said to submit evidence that includes policies and procedures, MOUs, DCOs, and processes, etc. We are supposed to provide the supporting documents with the link to criteria clearly noted. This seems to be different from what I'm hearing today. We are a CCBHC PDI grant.
There are limits to what terms tracker can hold in terms of size. So for right now, what we're asking for is what Kate just walked through for your initial submission, and then your GPO may ask you for additional information.
I think that's it. If there's no more hands raised, I think we went through all the questions. If you put your email in the chat and you want the lunch and learn, I'll stick on for a few minutes. If you need the lunch and learn link, please put your email in the chat. I don't have everybody's email that is on this. Thank you. Yeah, that's on this webinar today. Most of you probably joined through the link that Mary sent out through the ERA message or ERA two-way correspondence. Okay, lots of emails coming in. Okay, I'll have some homework then. All right, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to answer all those questions. I'm glad we had a lot of time for the Q&A session. I will be sending out the link with the slides. I'll also resend the guidance and the example that Mary provided through the two-way correspondence. So please put your email in if you want that. And thank you. And hopefully we'll be having more sessions like this as we move forward. Okay.
Thank you, Kate, for providing such a great webinar.
Thank you. And thanks, Selby.
Thank you, Selby, for everything.
All right, take care. I'm gonna just hang on mute so people can finish putting their emails in if they didn't get a chance.